Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. We're producing the show today for Forbes, as I'm a Forbes contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. And today we really have a wonderful guest, a new startup social entrepreneur that has launched a business with financing from Mark Cuban and Tim Draper that really got my attention, and I suspect will get the attention of a lot of people. They're trying to disrupt the way that nonprofits raise money, and doing that by providing newer, better tools at lower prices to eliminate the what Roderick Campbell, the founder and CEO who's with us today, calls the skimming model that so many crowdfunding sites and others are using when they help people raise money. Roderick, thank you very much for joining us. We're also joined by Chris Sinton, who is a board member, who is the founder of, or the co-founder of Network for Good and the chair of Start Out. Chris, thank you also for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Roderick, why don't you give us the quick overview of the business and tell us a little bit about how it works and what you're doing.
Sure. So a little bit of background is before founding this company, I worked a lot in the nonprofit world and certainly got my feet wet in the fundraising world, or the fundraising part of the nonprofit world. And the tools that I was using at the time when we were raising money, they were fraught with problems. A lot of them were built in the 90s and the early 2000s, and a lot of them really had stagnated since then. And there was some fundamental problems in the business models that we were encountering when we were trying to raise money, the biggest of which was donation skimming, which is the practice of taking a percentage of donations that are bound for a nonprofit. So providing a service, then taking a cut, essentially. And what I found was that those frustrations weren't just frustrations intellectually, they were also causing massive inefficiencies at the nonprofits that I was working with and really diverting funds away from the causes that they were supposed to support. So we founded Commit Change with a couple of very simple goals. One of them was unifying philanthropic technology all in one place, because really magical things happen when your donor management system, your fundraising platform, your donation processing, and your event ticketing system all communicate seamlessly. You can do pretty magical things. That, in combination with really working to eliminate donation skimming as a business model, because well, number one, I think it's unethical. Number two, I think it really inhibits nonprofits from using technology to its full ability.
But you certainly see evidence of those factors as you talk to nonprofit leaders, as I often do. But it begs the question, Roderick, if you're not taking a percentage, how are you making revenue? How do you pay yourself and for all the other costs to develop and administer and run the platform?
Yep, that's always the number one question, and it seems to perplex people, which is strange. So we don't take a cut of donations. We will never take a cut of donations through our platform. When you give through us, our objective is to make sure that 100% of every donation, or as much as possible minus credit card processing, hits the nonprofit. And eventually our goal is 100%. That said, we do have to sustain our business, and I think that we have the opportunity to build a very large business, but to do that by providing 3 tiers of service. The first tier is for capacity building for nonprofits. So we provide all of our core fundraising technology for free through our website. So event ticketing, donation processing forms, crowdfunding campaigns, and a myriad of other fundraising tools that we're building right now. Those are all available for free, no donation skimming, no setup costs, no monthly fees ever. The second tier is where we begin to monetize. We're releasing this next month. We're allowing nonprofits to take all of our technology, and for more sophisticated, more established nonprofits, for $75 a month, we're going to allow them to seamlessly integrate all of that technology into their own website. So they won't have to use Commit Change's website. And that makes a big difference in terms of performance increase for nonprofits when they can build it into their own website. And then the third tier that we're working on really is our bread and butter long term, and that's the donor management system. So the biggest players in our market, for instance, Blackbaud, is one of the companies we're gunning for. They're a 1.7, I think now, billion-dollar publicly traded company, and really they focus on the donor management piece, which is also where we're focusing long-term. For that, we'll be releasing our first version probably in about 6 months, and for that we'll be charging probably something like $250 a month, but slightly sliding scale so that we can also support smaller nonprofits. So the short answer is subscription service for our more advanced features.
Great. Now, do you have enough capital from Mark Cuban and Tim Draper to get there?
That's a very loaded question. Yes, I think we do. I'm very confident about that.
That's great. Now, Chris, you have an interesting background because you founded one of the legacy systems with which Roderick is now trying to compete. How did you get connected, and what drew you in to Roderick's world?
Well, the way we became connected was I've been in Silicon Valley and in San Francisco for the last 20 years working in technology. Early on, I helped lead the business-to-business internet revolution, if you will, and then wanted to understand how the internet could change the way people helped each other. So part of that was a series of initiatives, but leading up to my co-founding and being president of Network for Good. Network for Good was, I think, a really great idea, apparently a bit ahead of its time. I say apparently because many of the concepts within Commit Change were inherent in Network for Good 14 years ago. We just didn't have the adoption of the internet was maybe at 30% for the population at that time. Those were some of the barriers, but also the barriers that we saw were monetary. And so for very early on, what Network for Good did was 100% of donations went directly to the nonprofit. So there was no skimming. There was no percentage taken. We actually even subsidized the credit card processing fees for this new thing called the web. To help, because what we believed inherently and what I believed is that the internet will change the way people help each other, and we wanted to get more nonprofits on the internet so that they could be more effective, whether that was in fundraising or connecting with their constituents. So when I saw Commit Change's business plan and idea on it might have been through VentureBeat or somehow, I recognized the plan as something close to akin to what I had hoped to achieve with Network for Good, and reached out to connect with Roderick. And we have a great relationship now. It is really funny for me thinking that 14 years later we're still having sort of the same conversation. You know, Network for Good, having raised $1 billion in the last 10 years, I think is a great success story for the philanthropic community. At the same time, I think it's a factor of only about 22% of donations are being handled online, which means that we've got some inefficient processes and we've got some old ways. There's still a lot of upside for the philanthropic world to leverage the internet to be more effective in fulfilling the mission. And I'm hoping that Commit Change can help make that happen.
Well, it is a very disruptive technology that you're bringing to market, because there are a lot of businesses trying to make a living off of what you call skimming. A lot of the crowdfunding businesses, some of which have got some pretty significant scale and long histories. Global Giving's been around for 12 years, and this is fundamentally their model. It's Razoo, Fundly, Kimbia are all in this business of skimming off of these donations, and you know, they would argue, of course, and reasonably so, that what they skim is a relatively small portion of the total. But if you compare that to zero, it starts to look very different. So this is a very disruptive technology. Can you give us a little bit of a sense, Roderick, of where you are, the number of nonprofits using this technology today, the number of transactions you're processing today? Can you give us any sort of guide there as to how well along the road you are now?
Sure, but just to go back, because I want to clarify one thing. The percentage fees may seem low on the surface from an outside perspective. So these crowdfunding platforms typically charge between 5 and 10% of a donation. Donation processing services often charge between 1% and an additional 2% on top of the transaction cost for that organization. So you may look at it and say 1 to 2% for donation processing, 5 to 10% for crowdfunding. Maybe that's not a big deal. But when you actually look at a nonprofit, their fundraising efficiency for a physical mail appeal, so for their entire staff cost and the entire cost of out a physical mail appeal, typically is only about 10%, so about 10 cents out of every dollar. So in fact, this is a weird situation where technology, even though the percentages from the outside seem small, it actually is significantly harming, the internet in a way is significantly harming the fundraising efficiency of nonprofits by anywhere between 25% and 50% for the organizations that we're working on. So it's, just to clarify, like it's a pretty big deal. It really adds up, and especially over a $22 billion market, and then individual giving is $217 billion. So it adds up to billions quickly. But that said, so where our company is at, we recently graduated from Boost VC. this exceptional accelerator program, brand new in San Mateo. It's being run by Adam Draper, Tim Draper's son. We graduated from there. We started our first beta with a handful of nonprofits, let's see, about a year ago today, more or less. And then since then, it was kind of slow for the first 6 months. We really tested our technology with a core group of nonprofits. We just started getting our results back from those organizations, which is pretty stunning. So the organizations we've been working with for about a year. For food banks who are processing over $50,000 a year online, the increase, just for example, has been the lowest increase out of our pilot nonprofits. Has been 100% or 108% increase in their charitable giving online. Our largest increase was 600%, but that's a little bit of an outlier. So we just finished kind of running the first year with those organizations. Now we've overhauled our brand, released our new website. We released our new tools, which is our full comprehensive fundraising package, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And from there, just for example, like we went from working with like 30 or 40 nonprofits across the U.S. to today alone we signed up 22, 23. So our trajectory is accelerating rapidly. In terms of dollars raised,
23 nonprofits today.
Today, just today. That's correct. Before we were signing up at most maybe 2 or 3 months
There's
ago.
45 minutes to go before you get to 5 o'clock.
That's right, yeah, and we often receive odd signups like on the weekends and at night too. So we're accelerating rapidly.
Well, it really is, like I say, a disruptive technology. Are you getting hate mail from your competition?
No, not yet. I think we've flown under their radar for a while. We'll see what some of them say after this interview today, though. Donation skimming. I think donation skimming is kind of the big elephant in the room. It's a topic nobody wants to talk about. So
well, the nonprofits talk about it. I haven't talked to a nonprofit about it that hasn't talked about it. So
Yep.
they're aware. They're thinking about this and worried about this. So this is really a bold step forward.
Yeah, we hope so. I think it aligns a lot. It aligns perfectly with our mission and our values. But I think it also sets us up in a position strategically that allows us to make a very ambitious play in the market, in a very big market.
And have your crowdfunding tools that you're launching, have they got the full social media implementation, so there's great tools there?
We take it even a step further, actually. We think that one thing that's missing in fundraising is clear feedback. So, for instance, if I go to a nonprofit's campaign and they're supporting a backpack campaign for Children's Back to School, for instance, one of our organizations is right now in San Jose. For that organization, if I go to their campaign on any other platform and I share on Facebook or on Twitter, I have no idea what the impact of my action was. And by not having that feedback loop, it's very uninspiring to your supporters. And it also makes it very difficult for supporters to strategically leverage their social networks in any sort of meaningful way. So one technology that we're pioneering is called social impact tracking, which we're integrating very deeply into all of our fundraising technology, that provides real-time, highly detailed analytics about every action that a supporter takes, both to the supporter themselves and to the nonprofit, telling you things like, I shared on Facebook, and in real time I can see how many people have clicked through to this campaign because of my action, how many dollars were raised, how many people reshared, how many people did they reach, and you can see a cascading sort of family tree demonstrating the impact that your social capital or your action has for a nonprofit. And I think that technology really is going to be critical for digital fundraising for two reasons. One is to provide feedback so that people can be better supporters and inspired by their actions. And two, I think that there's a big play long-term around identity there, because our philanthropic identity is conspicuously missing from the internet, and I think that's problematic.
Well, these are really powerful tools that you're bringing forward, and it's exciting to see their implication. Chris, when you were at the early stages in your past life, did you envision all of the potential? Clearly, you started doing online fundraising before Facebook, before Twitter.
It was 1999.
Kind of seeing this as the fulfillment of your earlier vision?
Yes, in many ways. There are things that I can remember early on when this would be in 99, 90, 98, where there was a slide where I was laying out functionality and things that could be done, and then there was a box that said things that we cannot envision now that are enabled by the technology. So we kind of knew what we didn't know, and I think that what we're seeing now, the things that we didn't know then, is the social component of the internet and the advent of of Facebook and the way people are connecting directly to each other and not to sites. The other thing that we did not foresee then was the advent of mobile and this powerful tool, this computer I have in my pocket at all times. And so I think that, and then a third trend, and we're on the back end, would be just big data. You've got lots and lots of data, and now lots of computing power to be able to analyze that data and drive value from that for the nonprofit, and also, as Roderick was saying, as for a donor to see the impact of their giving. So those were things that we didn't see coming, and I'm really excited that that the tradition continues, that the technology continues to be exploited for good, to help further philanthropy.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, it really is a pleasure to have you both. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're both very, very busy, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your story. I congratulate you on your objectives, your goals, and your progress. And thank you for what you're doing in the world.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Devin.
All righty. Let's do some good.
All right, let's do some great
Sounds good.
All righty.